Welcome back to the Deep Dive, everyone. I am your host, and I know that since you're listening today, you are probably someone who is always hunting for the why behind really complex problems.
Absolutely, and I am thrilled to be here to help break it all down.
So today, our mission is to explore an incredibly eye-opening article we found from the Berkley Center for Reproductive Wellness. It's called Taming Inflammation to Optimize Fertility and Reproductive Wellness.
Yeah, and it's such a crucial read because it tackles this invisible saboteur of conception.
Right, because whether a couple is trying naturally or they're going through IVF, inflammation is this single, often overlooked factor that can completely dictate if they get pregnant.
Exactly. I mean, for decades, the entire field of reproductive medicine has been so hyper-focused on the macroscopic level,
Like the structural anatomy or the raw numbers on a lab report.
Yeah, exactly. But this source material forces us to zoom way, way in. We need to look at the microscopic environment where the actual raw materials of life are trying to operate.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because when people struggle to conceive, we usually blame hormones, right? Or we count eggs.
Oh, constantly.
But if this inflammation issue is so central, it seems wild that it's just hiding in plain sight.
Right.
I mean, if a standard blood test doesn't show it, what exactly are we looking for?
Well, we really have to fundamentally redefine what we mean by inflammation. Like, usually we think of it as a reaction to a visible injury.
Like slicing your finger while making dinner.
Right. The cut gets red, it swells up, it gets warm. That is acute inflammation. It's your immune system's healthy, localized repair response.
Okay, thanks.
Your body releases these signaling proteins called cytokines. They act like chemical messengers calling in the immune cell cavalry to clear out the damage.
But once the cut is healed, the cavalry packs up and goes home, right?
Exactly. The immune system has a natural off switch. The signals stop. But the problem we are analyzing today is what happens when that off switch literally breaks.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we're looking at a state called chronic low-grade inflammation. This is where those cytokines just stay elevated in your bloodstream month after month.
And I'm guessing you don't even feel it.
That is the scariest part. It's completely silent. You don't have a fever or a swollen joint. But this quiet immune response is a massive foundational driver of poor reproductive outcomes.
So, wait, is chronic inflammation essentially like having a smoke detector with a dying battery that just beeps constantly in the background of your body?
That is the perfect analogy. You eventually tune it out because you don't feel sick, but that low-level alarm is quietly wrecking your system.
But if there's no actual cut or infection to fight, what is triggering these cytokines to stay elevated?
Well, the triggers are actually embedded in ordinary modern life. The text breaks down several everyday culprits, starting with just age.
Just getting older.
Yeah. As our cells accumulate damage over decades, some enter a state called senescence. They stop dividing, but they don't actually die off.
Like zombie cells.
Exactly. And these zombie cells actively secrete inflammatory signals into the tissue. Researchers call it inflammaging.
Inflammaging. Wow, that makes so much sense. It's not just a metaphorical ticking clock.
Right. And then excess body weight compounds that aging process. We used to think fat tissue was just passive energy storage.
Like a biological pantry.
Yeah, but we now know fat tissue is highly biologically active. It functions almost like an endocrine organ. Enlarged fat cells literally secrete their own inflammatory cytokines.
Which links obesity to higher infertility risks, right?
A threefold higher risk, actually. It bathes the reproductive system in inflammation.
So the body is interpreting excess metabolic stress as an active injury. What about diet?
Processed foods, refined sugars, trans fats, they all actively spike those inflammatory markers. But whole food, plant-rich diets provide compounds that lower them.
What about environmental stuff, like plastics or pollution?
That is critical because it introduces a concept called oxidative stress. Everyday exposures like tobacco smoke, pollution, and endocrine-disrupting chemicals and plastics generate reactive oxygen species, or ROS.
Right, ROS.
Think of ROS as molecules missing an electron. They aggressively roam around, tearing electrons off healthy structures to stabilize themselves.
So they are essentially microscopic wrecking balls.
Exactly. And oxidative stress is when those wrecking balls outnumber your body's natural antioxidant defenses. It creates a vicious cycle where stress triggers more cytokines, which causes damage, which creates more wrecking balls.
And sometimes the trigger is a hidden medical issue too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You could have a low-grade bacterial presence in the reproductive tract without any symptoms, or autoimmune conditions conditions.
The source mentioned thyroid autoimmunity specifically.
Yes, having anti-thyroid antibodies is a huge link to reproductive difficulty. Even if your thyroid hormone levels look completely normal on a blood test, the mere presence of those antibodies keeps the smoke detector beeping.
Raising miscarriage risks.
Right. Conditions like endometriosis and PCOS operate on a very similar mechanism. This raises an important question, though.
Which is?
If our modern environment is constantly triggering this low-grade immune response, how does that specifically target our reproductive cells?
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Let's zoom down to the microscopic level, because there's a massive aha moment here for you listening.
Oh, definitely.
We always hear about women's biological clocks, right?
It's the pressure.
But the male side of the equation seems incredibly sensitive to this, too. Let's break down the mechanics, maybe starting with the female side.
Sure. To understand why eggs are susceptible to inflammatory damage, we have to look at their immense energy requirements.
They need a lot of fuel.
An extraordinary amount. A maturing egg has to dramatically multiply its number of mitochondria in the months before ovulation.
The mitochondria are the cellular power plants.
Exactly. But when chronic inflammation floods the ovary, those reactive oxygen species, the wrecking balls, they directly target and damage those tiny power plants.
So energy production just falters.
Yes. There's a specific hit squad of cytokines, namely TNF-alpha, IL-6, and IL-1 beta, that races the oxidative stress. This injures the egg's delicate DNA and actually accelerates the depletion of the ovarian reserve.
So the egg is trying to build this massive electrical grid to sustain a new life, but the inflammation is destroying the power plants before fertilization even happens.
It is devastating.
And what about the sperm? How does inflammation dismantle the male side?
Sperm face a different biological vulnerability. Their cell membrane is incredibly rich in specific fats.
And fats are vulnerable.
Very. They are highly susceptible to lipid peroxidation when exposed to reactive oxygen species. Imagine a stick of butter left out on the counter going rancid.
Oh, wow. Gross, but I get it.
A similar oxidative degradation happens on the sperm's outer membrane. Plus, sperm have virtually no cellular tools to repair their own DNA once it's damaged.
They are just microscopic delivery vehicles. If the cargo gets damaged in transit, they can't pull over and fix it.
Exactly. So on a semen analysis, this shows up as reduced motility. They literally can't swim as well. And abnormal morphology.
Misshapen sperm.
Right. But most critically, you see increased DNA fragmentation. The genetic payload is physically broken.
So a guy could get a standard test, the doctor says his numbers look great, but an inflammatory fire is quietly fragmenting the DNA.
Yes. Even a low level of white blood cells hiding in semen can raise oxidative stress enough to cause this. It completely upends the narrative that fertility struggles are just a female issue.
Male inflammation absolutely deserves attention. So we've got the raw materials, but what happens if an embryo actually does form?
That brings us to the uterine environment. Even with a perfect embryo, chronic inflammation can destroy the landing pad.
It sounds like trying to dock a spacecraft. The timing, the angles, the environment, everything has to be absolutely perfect.
Or the mission fails. For an embryo to successfully implant, the uterine lining, the endometrium, must transition into a highly precise receptive state.
The implantation window.
Right. And that requires a finely tuned molecular conversation between hormones, local cytokines, and immune cells. Chronic inflammation acts like static on that communication line.
How does that static manifest physically?
A well-studied example from the Berkley Center text is chronic endometritis.
Which is different from endometriosis.
Yes.
If
Chronic endometritis is a persistent, symptomless inflammation of the uterine lining itself, often caused by a lingering bacterial presence.
symptomless again,
Yeah.
so a woman would have no idea.
None. But at the molecular level, it changes the lining so drastically that when a healthy embryo arrives, the uterus is chemically unprepared. The docking bay doors are jammed,
Causing recurrent pregnancy loss.
and a repeated IVF failure. It also disrupts physical mechanics. Inflammation constricts small blood vessels, leaving the endometrium too thin and poorly perfused to sustain a pregnancy.
Wow.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it explains why just creating an embryo in a lab via IVF isn't a guaranteed fix.
You can't just plant a perfect seed into hostile soil.
Precisely. The internal environment must be addressed.
So what does this all mean for someone actually trying to conceive? We know diet matters, but the text specifically highlights ancient practices like acupuncture and customized herbal medicine.
Right. It's a huge component.
But wait, how does sticking needles in your skin actually stop cellular oxidation? Because, to a lot of people, that sounds a bit like magic.
I get that,
Uh,
but it is pure neurology. Modern science has mapped exactly how it works. One of the most critical findings is that acupuncture engages the body's built-in anti-inflammatory brake.
Wait, so we finally found the immune system's off switch.
We did. It's largely controlled by the vagus nerve, which connects your brain to your major internal organs.
Okay, but how does a nerve in your brain talk to an immune cell in your uterus?
Through neurotransmitters. When acupuncture stimulates specific points, the signal travels to the brain, which fires a signal down the vagus nerve.
And then what happens?
The nerve endings release a neurotransmitter called acetylcholine. That acetylcholine literally binds to your immune cells and commands them to dial down the production of that inflammatory hit squad, TNF-alpha, IL-6, and IL-1 beta.
So you are using a physical stimulus to trigger a neurological command that forces the immune system to chill out.
Exactly. And a landmark 2021 study in the journal Nature mapped this specific nerve circuitry. It's concrete biology.
That is incredible. And does this actually translate to the physical problems we discussed?
Oh, absolutely. As far back as 1996, researchers showed acupuncture reduces resistance in uterine arteries, physically improving blood flow.
Making the landing pad more receptive.
Right. And a 2005 study reported actual improvements in sperm structure. You dial down the reactive oxygen species, you protect the sperm from oxidizing.
And the meta-analysis from 2021.
It showed that adding acupuncture for IVF patients with a history of failure led to higher pregnancy rates and thicker uterine linings.
The article also heavily emphasizes customized herbal medicine. If the needles hit the brake, what are the herbs doing?
Many specific herbs are incredibly dense with powerful antioxidants. At a cellular level, an antioxidant generously donates an electron to those unstable reactive oxygen species
Neutralizing the wrecking balls.
before they can tear into the egg's mitochondria or the sperm's membrane.
But the article was very deliberate about using the word customized. This isn't just buying a generic fertility blend off the shelf.
Not at all. Generic formulas can't address individual systemic inflammation. A customized formula targets the specific biological presentation, whether it's a male factor, ovarian reserve, or lining thickness.
It's highly individualized, and I think it's vital to clarify for you listening, this integrative approach doesn't replace a reproductive endocrinologist, right?
No, definitely not.
If you need IVF, you still need your doctor.
No.
But this approach builds the healthiest possible foundation for those medical treatments to succeed.
Exactly. You are optimizing the soil before you plant the seeds, so the science isn't fighting an invisible fire.
Which brings us to an incredibly empowering takeaway. If you're listening right now and struggling, or just starting your journey, egg quality, sperm quality, and uterine receptivity are not fixed numbers.
Right. They are completely dynamic reflections of your internal environment.
And inflammation is modifiable. You have the power to change these conditions.
I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, building on the biology we explored today.
Go for it.
We talked about how an egg increases its mitochondria to fuel early embryo growth. The mother's egg is literally building the power plants for the very first stages of a new human life.
Right.
If modern low-grade inflammation is damaging those foundational power plants before conception even occurs, it makes you wonder.
Wonder what?
Could proactively taming that inflammation prior to pregnancy not just dictate whether we can conceive, but potentially influence the long-term metabolic blueprint and lifelong health of the child we eventually bring into the world?
Wow. Changing your invisible internal environment today to protect the long-term health of a generation tomorrow.
It's a profound thought.
It really is. It all comes back to finding that dying battery, identifying the hidden source of the alarm, and finally silencing the smoke detector so your body can do what it was beautifully designed to do.
Perfectly said.
Thank you all for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning, keep looking for the why, and we will see you next time.